If not, then we'll close the public hearing and begin with council action on the liquor license. May I have a motion then to approve the transfer?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Solberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there any discussion?
Is anyone here from that corporation?
I don't see anyone here.
Who is the CAM Development Group?
If you look on the application, I believe it refers to, well, one of them is Rod Redlin, I believe Virgil Bournes, Mike Hartel, and Brad Schmaling. And actually what this is more of a change of ownership only, so. So we've had a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Well, don't they have to have a location to have that license in effect?
The location, the licensed premises will be the same as it is currently at the Sunnyside location.
I thought they were gonna tear the Sunnyside down.
I believe that's the plan, yeah. So I don't expect this license to remain at that location for long.
Okay.
I believe there are plans to do an addition, follow-up transfer as well in the near future.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there any other questions? If not, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we'll have council action on the malt beverage license, and again, it's the same scenario. It's just a transfer of ownership. May I have a motion for that approval?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson and seconded by Mr. Garnos. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 4 is a application for a retail on-off sale malt beverage license for County Fair Banquet Hall. And we'll begin with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? Jeff, would you like to? Thank you.
As Mayor said, that we're applying for a malt beverage license for our banquet hall, which will seat about 300 people right now at the max. I think they had some slides here, but if you'd like to see some of the pictures of the banquet hall, we've done a lot of work with the inside of it, and we're just at this point in time, we're looking for a malt beverage license. So.
And this is so if your conferences or your groups of people want to have a cash bar set up in the back, they can do so.
That's
Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So it's only open then if you've got a wedding reception or that kind of a thing,
Yep,
right?
it'll be only open for when we have a wedding reception or a Christmas party and those types of things.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Is there anyone else here to speak to the issue? Chief VTech, or do you have any issues as far as, none? Okay, thank you. And it does meet the requirement as far as the distance from the Senior Citizen Center, so they marked that off as far as the feet requirement, so that's okay. So there are no other issues that I'm aware of, so. If not, then we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. And if I may have a motion then to approve. So moved by Mr. Garnos. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. York. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5 is ordinance number 06-01, which is rezoning lots 31 through 36, block 55. It's a replat of the West Watertown addition. And we'll begin with Rick with the second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. The ordinance is 0601 is entitled just to add an ordinance to rezone those lots that you already identified from an R4 manufactured home residential district to C3 highway commercial district. And with that, if you would open the public hearing, Mayor Fox will proceed with the rest of the discussion.
Okay, we'll begin with a public hearing on the rezoning. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? Rick?
If I might, I will take some time to introduce it, and I see the petitioner, Mr. Doug Ingles, is here. The request and the petition to rezone the property is brought to you by Mr. Doug Ingles, and a map of the area along with the adjacent the existing zoning of the property and that of the adjacent properties has been included in the packet. We can bring those materials as well as the site map up on the GIS if you're so inclined. I'll look for your guidance there. Otherwise, I probably will not bring it up. There's an indication in the petition for a potential to develop the site for commercial storage facilities. This issue was brought to the Plan Commission for their consideration and recommendation on December 22nd. Note that we also talked about it in the Public Works and Finance Committee venues on January 10th as well. The location of which is at 830 First Avenue Southwest, a landmark for those of you that have had some car repair there. Doug's Auto Surface is a good landmark. There is a concern expressed at the Plan Commission for expanding the C3 zone further away and further into their residential neighborhood from Highway 20, that is. You know, there's a strip of highway commercial zoning along Highway 20, and this proposal would extend that a little bit further into the residential districts of the vicinity, specifically the R4 district, but adjacent to that to the north is an R2 residential zoning district. There was a discussion of perhaps a compromise or an alternative zoning that might be affixed to the property rather than C3. A discussion of C2, which is a local commercial zoning district, perhaps might fit better from our perspective, staff perspective that is, as well as the Plan Commission as I understand it. Since this will be kind of a spot zoning, and the C2 is kind of intended to be a spot zone to serve and provide neighborhood services. Other note is that the property, if zone C3, is not large enough to meet the minimum lot requirements for that zoning district. The motion that was considered by the Plan Commission was to recommend the requested rezoning to C3, and that motion did not carry. The applicant has requested, though, that this full City Council consider his request, and that would be the extent of my introductory remarks and would yield to Mr. Ingles.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Mr. Ingles, would you like to step up and explain the reasons that you'd like to continue?
Just like Rick just explained, you know, we tried for C3. Basically, either want to develop the lot or, you know, be able to sell the lot or something of commercial use, you know, since that's what's going on next to the property and where it is located. You know, I felt it'd be a good spot for that, but like we talked about, the C2 zoning, you know, would fit what we want to do also, so that would be fine.
So you'd go along with the C2
Yes.
as far as the
Sure.
C3, so, okay,
Sure. Thanks.
thank you. Is there any other individuals to speak to this issue? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. And since Mr. Ingles said that he would be amendable to a C2,
I'd make that a motion.
would you make that amendment then? Okay, there's been a motion by Mr. Giselbeck to amend the request to a C2 zoning. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Schlechter, why didn't the C2 motion get carried forward in the Planning Commission?
I don't think that motion was ever made, Mr. Wilson. The extent of the motions that were considered was to for the C3 as requested. There was not an alternate motion made.
The Plan Commission actually made the motion to recommend that the rezoning go forward as a C3. When the vote took place, three Plan Commission members voted in favor of the C3. Three did not vote in favor of the C3, therefore the motion did not carry.
Does under C2, is it a conforming lot, or is it still non-conforming?
I believe it would be conforming. The difference there in the square footage would be 10,000 square feet compared to 20,000 square feet for C3.
The only other difference, I believe, is in setbacks. I think there's a larger setback that is required in the C2
Yes.
because of the nearness to residential.
Now, when Mr. Engel said he'd take the C2, is he aware of that? Those different additional square footage requirements?
I'm hearing Mr. Engels in the background or behind me saying yes in the affirmative. He's aware of those setback requirements associated with the C2.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, and that is that, yeah, if we go ahead and approve this as a C2, I would hope that we build within the confines of the lot and not request variances for setback variances and all that, because otherwise we kind of defeat the purpose.
Okay, I guess, is there any other comments being made?
Well, no, but is there a response to that, Doug? What Brad's concerns just were? I mean, to approve it one day and then have you come back next week and ask for a variance, I know that's what he's concerned about.
Well, with the business that's next door, with the commercial building, you know, to the west of it, I mean, that was a thought that, yeah, someday, you know, if what I wanted to put there or somebody else wanted to put there wasn't big enough, you know, they may request a variance. But I didn't think it'd be that big a deal since it's, and I'm only talking about going to the west next to the other commercial building, not the other direction, you know, where it's residential.
Well, that would be their option to deny the variance at that time. So.
Right. But it was something that I had thought of, yes.
I guess our desire always with zoning is that we live within the rules, and that's what we try to do, and not, you know, constantly put more on property than we can. But
Right,
as
but
he said, it's up to the Board of Adjustment at the times with whatever specific
Right,
project
but,
comes
I
in.
mean, variances are pretty common also, so, thanks.
Thank you. Well, there's been a motion and a second to approve the C2 as an amendment to the original request. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is a replat of the North Ridge 28th Edition, Resolution 0609. Rick?
Thank you, Mayor. The plat of Northridge 28th Edition is brought to you by proprietors Marvin West and Laverne Zamo, doing business as L&M Developers Incorporated. This is a replat of the area that we've come to know as somewhat of a private and gated portion of the Northridge subdivision area. This is very typical, and you can see from the documents that were included in your agenda packet that we've done. The council, that is, has taken similar actions in the past. The plat describes and follows the exact outline of a twin home that has already been constructed, and the common line between the two lots, 1 and 2, that is the common wall between the two duplexes. The exterior lines then are extended to the private road and this is for the purpose of describing a piece of property on which one half of a duplex is located, just to facilitate the sale and transfer of property. So with that, would suggest and recommend your approval of this.
May we have a motion then for that approval of the plat?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Garnos. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Solberg. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 7 is the Arrow Avenue right-of-way vacations, starting with A portion from US Highway 81 to 6th Street East, which is resolution number 0607, and we'll begin with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue?
Rick, want to introduce it?
I can certainly talk about it just a little bit. This petition is brought to you by Les McElhaney, David McElhaney, Charlotte McElhaney, and Troy Bendy. Their request is to vacate a portion of the Arrow Avenue right-of-way. from Highway 81 to 6th Street East. Right now, the right-of-way is a total of 80 feet wide. They're requesting that portions of that right-of-way, 7 feet on each side, be vacated, reducing therefore the right-of-way from 80 feet down to 66 feet. There's a history here. We feel that the request to vacate the property or the right-of-way is in response to dealings with the city and Lake City Motors specifically with regard to vehicles currently displayed for sale on the boulevard within that right-of-way that is being suggested for vacation. In our Plan Commission hearings of December 22nd, it was also discussed that street right-of-ways in this portion of the city were platted with a width typically of 80 feet, dating back to the 1880s, which is kind of a historical interest. Arrow Avenue right-of-way, however, does vary in width. It's 80 feet from Highway 81 to 9th Street, and then adjacent to the school property between 9th Street and 11th Street, it reduces down to, I believe it's 50 feet, and then from 11th Street on over to 19th Street, the right-of-way is 60 feet. Arrow Avenue is identified as a local street in our current major street plan of our comprehensive land use plan. Our current ordinance, though it was platted at 80 feet, our current ordinance, if we were to plat that street today, would call for a 66-foot width, which is what the petitioners are requesting. Also of note, this issue of the display of vehicles has been addressed previously with the Board of Adjustment dating back to 1994 when the special exception use was granted by the Board of Adjustment with a very specific condition that the landscaped areas or the right-of-way not be used for the display of the automobiles. On December 22nd, the Plan Commission took action recommending that the vacation occur, and that's their recommendation to you, with the condition that the landscaping that currently exists at Lake City Motors, though non-conforming, as it is not grass, it is a granular material with shrubbery type plantings. They are recommending that type of, they being the Plan Commission, is recommended that type of landscaping be continued along the Lake City Motors property, both on the north and south sides of Arrow Avenue. Also note that the existing blacktop, a portion of which would have to be removed to accommodate the landscaping, but a portion of that blacktop that exists could be left there and utilized as sidewalk until such time that the adjacent parking lot and or that sidewalk area would reach a point where it would have to be replaced because of its deteriorating condition. At that time, then the sidewalk, a concrete sidewalk, would be installed in accordance with city ordinance. And with that, I guess that would conclude my comments.
Herb, you have something you'd like to say to us?
In addition, staff had some concerns on whether or not the Plan Commission was actually able to make that kind of accommodation of amending the ordinance, if you will, to accommodate the applicant when typically that is a Board of Adjustment action because we're asking for a variance. We certainly thought that given what the applicant was asking for and the potential value of that right-of-way given its location, that it certainly would be within the rights of the Plan Commission to ask that the applicant in fact bring that site up to conformance with the landscaping ordinance. We didn't, in all honesty, we didn't ask for this fight or this argument or whatever you want to call it. It was given to us as a result of a Board of Adjustment action that was placed on Highway 81 Liquors and Subway when they developed that site, of which accommodations were made on the west side of the property next to 81 that we would amend their landscaping requirements if they would so comply with the landscaping requirements on Arrow Avenue. If you look there today, well, right now it's full of snow and ice, and in the spring it's a mud hole because it's not finished. And you know, there's no parking plan because honestly they don't have enough space. And so when we asked that applicant, well, why aren't you complying with what was directed? The question was, well, you know, why aren't they? And so that's why we're here.
Thank you, Herb.
Rick, can you bring up on the screen, the aerial photo so everybody can see the area in particular and the, what they want vacated and how it affects the property?
Mr. Johnson, is this photo adequate to serve that purpose?
That's the one I wanted.
Okay. This is Arrow Avenue. If people are following the pointer right now, left to right, that is Arrow Avenue. From Highway 81 on the left. And that must be 6th Street here. On the right. The blue lines indicate that portion of the right-of-way that has been requested, and it's 7 feet has been requested to be vacated, reducing the overall width from 80 feet to 66 feet. Note that, and I'm sure if the McElhaney's were able to be here this evening, they would point out that they have already relocated the cars on both sides of Arrow Avenue in a good faith effort to abide with what we have asked them to do in terms of moving the cars back. So this photograph was taken in April of 2005, and I know they would want to make that comment.
I would point out, in addition, on the north side in their small lot, their point they would make would be, if you require me to move, or you require us to move the cars back, they come to the northern edge of the blue strip, then we can our customers can no longer drive in the driving lane between the two rows of vehicles.
But that's the way it was when they bought that property and chose to put the business there. The land didn't change, right? Right. So just to be clear, when they came to the planning commission said, okay for us giving up that right of way to them, with the exception that they use our current landscaping ordinance to develop that, correct? And then they said, we'll take your property, but we don't want to follow that rule, right?
That was in essence the gist of the discussion.
Okay. So they have the property. I mean, that's already been that's already a condition of the planning commission. All they have to do is do the landscaping ordinance the way it's written.
Well, they don't have anything yet because you
But I mean,
you have to approve it as a city council.
but it did go through the planning commission that way.
That's affirmative.
Okay.
Okay, we're still in the public hearing portion. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this issue? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and we'll go to council action. And because of the McElhaney's not being here and Bindy's, I guess we'll have to decide whether we want to proceed or if we wish to table it to another time. So I'll let the council decide that. Is there a motion then to approve or disapprove of the right-of-way vacation?
I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we agree with the planning commission and grant the right of way, but obey the landscape ordinance.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, they're seconded by Mr. Solberg. Any further discussion?
I certainly don't understand what good that would do. This does not resolve the problem that we've had over there for years.
Well, they ask for the right of way to be relieved, but I suppose they want the whole thing. I mean, they want it released and then they want to have possession of it to do with it as they please. Correct?
That's my impression.
There's a couple ways to comply with the city's order. That's one. One is to move the cars. The other is to make their property large enough to provide adequate space to display their vehicles on private property. They have chosen the route right now, requesting relief by vacating a portion of the right-of-way.
I guess I'm really confused. I really don't understand why the planning commission would agree to a situation to give up that right of way. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I'd like to know some more about what the thought process was on that.
Well, didn't they give it up, George, with the understanding of the stipulation then that the front of that and a certain portion of asphalt, as Mr. Schlechter said, would go into a landscape mode? So it wouldn't be directly on Arrow Avenue? Is that what I heard?
Yes, as I understand the motion from the Plan Commission, they were willing to give up the 14 feet, 7 feet on each side, but this area where the cursor is right now would be landscaped, as would this area, say, except for the driveways and accesses. Very similar in nature to the type of landscaping that has been provided right here. And they note, that was one of the first projects, as we have come to understand, with the ordinances, the landscape ordinance that was adopted in 1993 along the major highways. And because this property intersects a major highway, then it was this property was held along Arrow Avenue to those same standards, and the landscape plan was approved by the city of Watertown to provide for the 10-foot of landscaping materials, though not grass at that time, but the plan was approved and was installed in accordance with that plan. Now the Plan Commission, again, just reiterating, the Plan Commission's motion recommends to the City Council to vacate the blue areas as requested, with the contingencies that the areas be landscaped here and here, similar to their other landscaping, which is, the staff's concern is that doesn't conform with our current ordinance.
Because the current ordinance is grass,
It is
no
grass.
gravel material, grass.
It's, pretty simple and straightforward as grass.
But when they went into this action, they were in compliance. Is that what you said in '93 when this ordinance, what they did there was okay?
I believe that to be true, yes.
Okay. Now, when we're talking about this, even though it's coming up next, does that mean then also that Subway would be held to the same standards as what we're talking about? Because that's like the next item, but it's all one conversation, right?
No, Subway and the Highway 81 liquors would be held to the standard of today, under which
Okay.
they were issued the building permit.
Okay.
So that corner would be grass with a sidewalk, concrete sidewalk.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, the item you're referring to that's next is actually further east on Arrow Avenue. That is not the subway portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, the next question then, I think I heard you say that if this street were to come into play today, that you would hold it to the 66-foot standard, not the 80-foot standard.
That's correct.
But we probably wouldn't have let them put the car lot in there then. We don't know that though, that's just supposition.
I believe it is zoned C3. There could be a car lot there. I think there was an issue of size. There was a variance granted. I'm sorry, and I spoke in terms of special exception use. That was a mistake on my part. It was actually a variance because the lot wasn't large enough to meet the C3 requirements.
Along the east side of the property, those cars in that picture also were all parked out on the right of way as well, right? Have those all been moved back? Is that a separate?
As far as we know, yes. That was part of the directive that was in my letter when it went out last August, was for them to in fact move it. The right of way there is at an odd angle, so it's hard to tell if every single car is completely back. But in essence, what they did is moved all of their cars about 5 feet back, which is about half of what they should have done.
Well, the McElhaney's have pointed out to us that, if the issue is display of goods on public right-of-way, that this certainly is not the only location in our community. I'll just leave that being
As the
said.
pictures
Yeah.
would indicate that you've probably seen.
Okay, we've had a motion. Is there any further discussion on this issue?
Yes, I'd like that motion repeated, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Garnis, my motion was to reinforce the Planning Commission's decision to grant them the right-of-way. We would release the right-of-way to them, but they must obey our current landscape ordinance.
Well, considering the past history,
Without them here to visit with, it's hard to make a decision at all. But go ahead.
well, considering the past history, aren't we getting the cart a little bit of the head of the horse? Why don't we have them do the landscaping and then we'll consider the vacation?
We've had a motion and a second. Aren't we required to vote on that before we do any amendments? So, do you want to amend that, Gordy?
Actually, then, Gordy, they'd be landscaping our property. They probably would be reluctant to do that. because then we might back out of the deal. I mean, they might think we would.
Well, at the same
you know.
time, we have no assurance that they're going to do it either.
Well,
We do have assurance of those, that they have.
as we're going to see farther down on the agenda with the next item that's coming up, they're gonna ask us to do the same thing a block or so farther down the street. And I really have a hard time with the concept of grabbing a vacation of a stretch here and a stretch there and leaving, I mean, it's real piecemeal to me.
The plan commission struggled with this as
mean,
well,
I
so
just
you're
brought
not
a
alone
motion.
in the debate or the the consideration of this request, that's for sure. They had the same concerns that
I don't disagree with Mr. Johnson's at all, his opinion on that it is kind of a weird like thing to do, but, you know, I don't know, we need to come to a conclusion with this thing that's been going on for a long time, so.
The appropriate action would be to either approve the request, deny the request, or table the request.
We've had a motion and a second then from Alderman York to, I believe, approve the vacation with the stipulation that they follow the landscape ordinances. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? May I have a roll call, please?
Okay, on the motion to approve the resolution, Arbogast,
No.
Garnos,
No.
Gisselbeck,
No.
Heller,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Meisenheimer,
No.
Solberg. Walder,
No.
Wilson,
No.
and York.
Yes.
That was a yes? Okay. 2 votes in favor, 8 opposed.
Thank you. The motion was defeated. We'll go on to,
Well, we still haven't, that was to approve it, so I guess it's just dead, right?
Just leave it. Let it sit.
just let it sit, I suppose, unless someone wants to make a motion to table it, or we've denied it. That's correct.
Then I'll move that we reject it for this time, at this time.
Okay, there's been a motion to reject this by Alderman Garnos. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Heller. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Let the record stand that the lone no vote was by Alderman Solberg. And we'll move on to item number B.
again,
It's a portion of, a portion at 7th Street East, which is resolution number 06-08. And Rick, would you like to begin that with our public hearing, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. This is a very similar request. We received it at the same time. The petitioners, David and Charlotte McElhaney, submit a petition for the vacation of the 7 feet that's illustrated on the graphical equipment right now, thereby reducing the right-of-way from 80 feet to 73 feet. This is the location of their other portion of their car lot and their sales lot, so they see a very similar, the issues are very similar in terms of the use of the boulevard for the display of the vehicles, and sensing that, they were going to have both issues, both locations addressed at the same time. So the motion by the recommendation of the Plan Commission on December 22nd was to recommend approval of the right-of-way vacation with the condition that the petitioners comply with the landscape ordinance, and that motion passed unanimously by the Plan Commission.
Is there anyone else to speak to the issue in the public open? If not, we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. And I would look for a motion to either approve or reject this vacation.
I'll make a motion to reject the application.
Motion by Alderwoman Walder to reject the vacation. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Wilson. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Rick. Herb, we'll discuss the digital flood insurance mapping with our FEMA representatives.
We're fortunate both tonight and for the next couple days to have several members from the Federal Emergency Management Agency in our community to visit with us, reference the proposed flood insurance study and mapping revision. I'd like to introduce Barbara Fitzpatrick from FEMA, who's here tonight to provide the City Council and the listening public a brief overview of the National Flood Insurance Program and a general discussion of the process of adopting and implementing the updated flood insurance study and mapping. I'll just comment for the listening public that no individual questions or concerns are going to be discussed here tonight. Again, it's a general overview. I would encourage members of the City Council to ask whatever questions you might have, because they'll certainly help both staff and our FEMA representatives in preparing for the discussions we have tomorrow. Just for the public's information, a couple of different opportunities to visit with FEMA exist. We'll be on the radio starting at 7 o'clock in the morning first at KSDR, KS93 for a half an hour. Then we're going to move over to KWAT AM 950 for the What's Up program, and we'll do a brief presentation there, followed by, I assume, David J. Law will open the airlines for questions from the public. After we're done there, we're going to go over to the county commissioners meeting and give them a brief update. And then finally, I believe tomorrow afternoon from 4 to 7 p.m. Upstairs City Hall will be an open house format for the general public to come in. We'd ask that you enter through the City Council chambers doors and go upstairs to the upstairs meeting room, and between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m. And hopefully we'll staff and the FEMA representatives will be able to answer questions, or at least give you guidance on how we're going to proceed through this process. So I think with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Barbara Fitzpatrick for her comments.
Thanks, Herb. Hi, I'm Barb Fitzpatrick, and I'm from FEMA Region 8, which is out of Denver, Colorado. And I am the South Dakota National Flood Insurance Program Specialist. I have with me tonight Leslie Bailey, back here in the corner. She's with FEMA to help us on outreach with mapping. I have Michelle Saxman, who is the South Dakota National Flood Insurance Specialist. And then I have Kevin Doyle, who works for Michael Baker Jr. Corporation, who is a consultant engineering firm for FEMA that helps produce all of the maps and finalize them for us. As a little bit of background, the City of Watertown joined the National Flood Insurance Program in approximately 1984. Their current National Flood Insurance map, which is called a FIRM, which is a flood rate insurance map, is dated 1989. We, FEMA, have been doing study work around here on certain areas, not the entire floodplain, but certain areas within the floodplain of the City of Watertown. It was started many years ago, and we are now here to try to present to you the preliminary maps so you can see what the changes are. Any questions and concerns you have, this is a time frame that you will have to present any scientific changes that you think should go forth. And that's the purpose of tonight's meeting, is to present to you these preliminary maps. I'll have Kevin explain to you as an engineer the areas that are remapped, and between him and myself and anybody else that's here, we will answer your questions. And if not, we hope we can answer them tomorrow night also. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
All right. Hi, I'm Kevin Doyle, and what I'd like to do, hopefully I can figure this out, is pull up something on the screen here. Is this? No, I think it's here. Oops. There we go. There we go. A flood insurance study it's a long and complicated process. So what I'd like to show you is where we are in this process and where we have to go in order to get these maps effective. Basically, this first area where it says local needs identified, that's the scoping process. That was done years ago, where FEMA comes into a community and finds out what the community's needs are. Once we find out the needs, we go into starting to do the flood insurance study. So we develop the engineering and mapping data. And when that's all done, we issue a preliminary digital flood insurance rate map or flood insurance rate map. We issued that and we sent it to the City of Watertown for review. And the City of Watertown had a 30-day review period. And at the end of that 30-day review period, we have what's called the final meeting. That's where we are right now. We met with the city today, and the city had some comments on the maps, which we'll take back, we'll look at, and we'll make the changes that need to be made. After that's done, the changes are made, what we do is we come down here, and we actually, there is new flooding data for this study. So what we'll do is we'll publish in the newspaper twice, usually a week apart, the new base flood elevations or flood elevations for the new study. Once it's published a second time, that starts this appeal period. And that's the time for residents, citizens, engineers to come in, look at the data, and comment on it. And if they have anything that they can prove is technically wrong with the study, that's when we want to hear it, and we want to see it, and we want to make sure we have the most accurate data on the map. That appeal period lasts 90 days. At the end of the appeal period, if there are no appeals, we go right into the adoption period. If there are appeals that have to be resolved, there's an appeal resolution period, which the time frame is a little undetermined depending on how many appeals we receive. Once we resolve all appeals, we go into the adoption period, and that is 6 months. So after the appeal period, we actually issue what's called a letter of final determination, and that letter basically states that these maps are going to become your effective flood insurance rate maps after a 6-month period. And during that 6-month period, FEMA will work with the city to get all the ordinances updated to reflect the new flood insurance rate map. And that takes us to an effective map. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for our visitors this evening, Council?
How hard will it be after this is all said and done if we go ahead with dams or we do preventive north of town to stop the flood? How hard will it be to get this reversed?
That's where we get into this, where the chart says map maintenance. We want to reflect the most up-to-date flood hazard information. So we were discussing this at a meeting we had earlier. It kind of depends on the nature and the size of the study as far as the vehicle we use to change the maps. If it's a small revision, we can change them very quickly. If it's a larger scale revision, we'll get that data in. It has to go through a study process, so you're looking at a year period because you have to go through this appeal period and adoption period again, which automatically takes you to 9 months, and that doesn't include some review time of the new study. So if it's a large scale revision, you're talking about a year. If it's a small scale revision, you're probably talking around 6 months.
But how hard will it be to get you guys to come back again?
If you've got updated data, we want to find out about it.
Okay.
So, and definitely, if that project's going to go forward, start the coordination up front and say, we're going to build this project, because we can't reflect anything on the map until it's built.
Yeah.
But if FEMA's involved in the process early on and we're aware of it, then we can plan for it.
FEMA will work hand in hand with the Corps of Engineers to go through that process.
Do we have a map that we can put up and show?
Oh. This is. Okay. So this is the entire city. The biggest change is on the Big Sioux River. All the other flooding should have remained identical to the study that the information that's on the effective map. The biggest benefit is that now the map is in a digital format, so the city can take the digital information and overlay it on aerial photos, overlay it on their own base map, overlay it with other information, and utilize it how they want. Before, all the maps were paper, so it made it a little more difficult to work with. In addition, if we were to do a revision on the old paper maps, what you get issued is a piece of the map that says this area has changed. Now we can actually revise the digital map, and then the city can have that digital map right after we revise it, so you don't have to tape a bunch of paper maps together. But yeah, this is the new study reaches down through here.
Essentially, anything in green, you would be required to buy flood insurance if you had a mortgage. The yellow or the orange, whatever that color is it would be the 500 year flood zone, which you would not be required necessarily to buy flood zone or flood insurance in that area. But the green is where the definite impact of this program occurs, as well as raising the elevation at the lake by 2 feet, roughly. And at the lake, that would bring in a large number of homes that previously never had to buy flood insurance. And I guess my rule of thumb just for communication to people, if you had water damage or were anywhere close to having water in the 1997 flood, you would come into Zone A and the new flood map at Lake Compesca, which would require flood insurance. Lake Pelican also has a new elevation that never had before, right? Is that correct, Herb? Or a portion of it?
Lake Pelican didn't have an elevation before that we know of, but it was established at 1717.0 under the NAV 1988 datum.
One of the questions that came up earlier today was if you currently are buying flood insurance, use myself as an example, my house is not in the flood zone. But it's close enough that I buy flood insurance, so I'm buying at a preferred rate in Zone X. If I go into Zone A under the new program, from what I'm told, you would be able to be grandfathered in at a lower rate. So it would be an advantage to everybody in the community that sees their house in the area where the new flood map would be, is to go out and buy flood insurance now, because it's going to save you a lot of money over waiting until the map takes effect, and then you're going to be paying at a much higher rate.
Right.
That's a good point.
That's if you have a mortgage. If you don't have a mortgage, then you don't have to do anything. Although I think you're taking a risk by not doing it if something should happen down the road to the property.
I think what Mr. Johnson was trying to point out is that anybody can buy flood insurance. Because you belong to the flood insurance program, anybody in the city is eligible to buy flood insurance, and there's different rates. If you're in what was this blue or the what was that, green zone, and you have a mortgage on your home, you must buy flood insurance by law passed by Congress in '68, and the mortgage companies will require it. If you're in the what color was it on this map? I was gonna the yellow on this map. You're in the areas that it is, optional to buy your flood insurance. And if you go in buy flood insurance in the yellow areas or the pink area even, you can get it at a lower rate. You will be grandfathered in when, if you have insurance before this map goes into effect, and then you become into an A zone. We will be having, arranging for insurance training for insurance agents and the lenders. I don't have a date set The best I could get from the gentleman that does that, it will probably be August or so, or maybe September. But he's planning it, but he doesn't have any dates set. But Watertown is always a place that he's willing to come. So we will be having insurance training to help the insurance agents get, and hopefully time it so it's before this map goes into effect.
What again was that approximate date that this new map would go into effect?
We don't have that now, but it's going to be approximately 9 months from now.
We're under the assumption, Mr. Garnos, that we'll have an updated map that's in effect by the end of this year.
That's pretty good. It depends. If there is appeals that slows it down, that will affect the date when it comes out. But it just moves on the typical time frame. It'll take approximately 9 months.
So as I understand it, then those of us who have flood insurance, if we buy it now, we can buy it at the rate that which we've been buying it, instead of when we're reclassified or whatever the terminology
Correct.
is.
And I assume you're talking about if you buy it now and you're not in a flood zone.
I live at the lake.
What?
You're not in a flood zone currently, and as an example, I investigated on my property, and I pay about $300 a year in flood insurance on being outside of the flood zone. And if I were in the flood zone, I would pay about $1,500 a year. So that's a $1,200 savings. So there's definitely an incentive to get in the program now. I mean, not everybody. It's all based on the amount that you're going to buy, but there's definitely a savings. One of the other common questions that has come up to me is, my structure, just take this south central part of Watertown where all that green is at. There are individuals who say, my structure sits up high, a little bit of an island in the area, and I've never gotten water in there. There are ways to get out of paying flood insurance, right?
Right. The process would be called letter of map amendment. And you have to have an elevation certificate that would be signed by a certified engineer stating that your lowest floor, which would include a basement if you have one, or crawl space, must be above whatever the base flood elevation is for the area. If you can prove that, then it goes to Kevin's office, not just Kevin, for approval. And that is the one way. The other way to prove you're out of it is flood insurance only covers walled and roof structures. So if your lot is partially in the floodplain, but you can get a survey to prove that your house is out, and they will sign it, then you can send it in for the same letter of map amendment to show that your house is out. Everything still has to be sent to your mortgage company for their acceptance. They accept it, then you take that to your insurance company, and then they will amend your policy. But everything has to go by the mortgage company. They will only accept from a letter from FEMA certified that it's correct, but it's up to them to accept it.
Does flood insurance not cover only until the water comes over your threshold? Is that where flood insurance, in other words, where does it take effect? If it goes in your basement windows, it doesn't cover, but it covers if it goes over your threshold, I heard.
That's one definition. Understand that it has to be if you're going for a flood, it's overland flow.
Yeah.
I think that's the catch of what you're talking about. If it just goes into your basement has limited coverage. If it's in your house, the structure, it's not going to cover any damage to your land. But when it gets into your house, the living areas above, yes, that's when it's going to have your full benefit of coverage. Because a basement is only very limited. It will not cover all the pretties you see on the wall. It will only cover the basics. Because if somebody lives in a flood zone area, they don't want to encourage people living in the basement to increase their risks. So that's why there's limited coverage in a basement. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. Yeah.
Kinda. Hey, I'm government. That's all I can give you is kinda.
One of the other more common comments from the south central part of town there is that in the 97 flood, there was not substantial flood damage in that area. And and I think everybody should know that we were extremely lucky that there wasn't damage at that point. The prisoners that were up here building the dikes in the southwest part of town had the dikes going, but the amount of water that was coming down the system was expected to overwhelm those dikes, and then the blizzard hit and essentially froze the flood in its tracks. And previously the Corps of Engineers had said that those dikes were within about 4 hours of collapse, and if they had collapsed, that whole section of town would have been flooded, and we would have had about another $10 million of damage in this community at that point. So we were very fortunate in '97. Could have been a lot worse than it was at that point, but nobody's in that green area is safe from the water coming down the river in a major flood.
No, and to make that even a more stronger statement, in reality, nobody is out of harm's way when it comes to flooding. There are, on average, more people are flooded in this map, the yellow and the pink areas, what we would call the 500-year flooding. More people have damage and flood in that, statistically, than they do in the A zone. So everybody is at threat to be flooded.
That yellow zone on there essentially also means that in a case of a 100-year flood, there might be up to a foot of water in most of that yellow
Correct.
area as well.
Correct.
Would you
And-
explain that? Why would the people in the pink? I didn't understand that last statement you made. You said statistically there's more damage in the pink and the yellow areas than there are in the A area. Why is that?
I'm just, so many people in these are not colors I'm used to, so let me say the pink and the yellow area, what we would call the 500-year floodplain. Statistically, people are flooded there, even though their risks are lower. And if you take the number of people with policies in these pink and yellow areas and compare them to the green areas, their risk of flooding is as high statistically. This is what, on the green, what we're showing is what the engineering has proven, that the people are at the highest threat to be flooded and damaged. The other ones are at a lesser threat. But that's why flood insurance is available to everyone, because everybody across the United States can be flooded, no matter where you live.
Just as clarification, would just be the yellow area would be like the 500-year, and then the pink area would be all the area that's outside of either the 100 or 500.
Right.
That's why I wondered why they would get the.
Yeah. So the yellow area is of the greatest next level of risk, and then you're still going to have
Yes, but anybody
potential.
can. If there's a
Right.
creek or anything around, anybody can be flooded.
Right.
It's a matter of geography. Those areas are larger and they have more people in them.
And when we make a map like this, we're not saying that people outside these areas aren't going to be flooded. What we're saying is, with the 100-year floodplain, in any given year, there's a 1% chance that you're going to be flooded. With a 500-year floodplain, in any given year, there's a 0.2% chance. And then outside those areas, the chances are less. But we're not saying the flood is going to be confined to those areas. The flood can go anywhere.
Any condition can happen.
Excuse me, any further questions to Ms. Fitzpatrick and the rest of them? If not, why, thank you. You've got a real busy day tomorrow.
Yes, the city set us up pretty well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and we look
Thank you.
forward to your stay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Could we have the rest of the lights on, please? Agenda item number 9 is Mike Berger. This consideration of bids received for purchases of the equipment for the wastewater and solid waste departments.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. A bid opening was held at 10 a.m. on January 10th for the solid waste pup truck, a used water truck for the landfill, alternative daily cover applicator for the landfill, and a sewer steamer rebuild. To begin with, the solid waste pup truck, this is the small size refuse truck that's used for litter patrol around the landfill with a MADVAC system, also litter patrol along roadways. It's used to collect downtown sidewalk garbage containers and help out with missing cans in tight areas. 2 bids were received for the pup truck chassis. The low bid was from Watertown Ford Chrysler in the amount of $25,822. Point of interest here is that the state bid for the same Ford 350 with a diesel engine was only $89 less than the local bid. So the recommendation is to award to the local vendor, Watertown Ford Chrysler, in the amount of $25,822. One bid was received for the pup truck body from Sanitation Products of Sioux Falls. It was in the amount of $29,775, less $5,000 trade-in for the existing unit for a total net bid of $24,775. And the recommendation is to award this bid then for the pup truck body to Sanitation Products in that amount. That brings the total bid price of the pup truck chassis and body combined to $50,597, which is less than the $60,000 budgeted. For the used water truck for the landfill, 3 of the 4 bids received for the used water truck did not meet the spec. The 4th bid was not really considered by us because it was nearly around $22,000 over budget. So we recommended rejecting and re-advertising. What the vendors have to do to comply with this spec is add an additional tag axle. That's one of those mechanical axles you can raise and lower, so that if the truck has a full tank of water, you'll drop that axle and it'll meet load requirements on our roads. And for the alternative daily cover applicator, all 3 of those bids did have some exceptions also, so we recommended rejecting those and re-advertising. The landfill staff has notified all of the vendors of that water truck and the ADC applicator that we plan to reject and re-advertise those. The final item would be the sewer steamer rebuild, and this unit is used to thaw out sanitary and storm sewer lines. It's used to manage the annual spring thaw of the storm sewers and occasionally open up frozen sanitary sewers. We budgeted $27,500 for a complete rebuild of the existing unit. We received one bid from Midwest Boiler of Sioux Falls in the amount of $10,190, and the recommendation then is to award this bid to Midwest Boiler in that amount of $10,190. And all of these recommendations do come with the approval of the January 24th Public Works Committee.
May we have a motion then for the approval of that? So moved by Mr. Giselbeck, seconded by Mrs. Arbogast. Is there any further questions to Mike? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Item number 10 is a South Broadway Bridge replacement resolution to add to the project to the state 5-year plan. And Dave Peterson?
Good evening. In 2005, Austin Engineering did the evaluation of the bridges in the city of Watertown that are on the 2-year cycle as far as looking at the condition of the bridges. And in their review, when they looked at the South Broadway Bridge, there was considerable amount of hairline cracking on the underside of the bridge. And in review of the design of the bridge, it was determined that the bridge wasn't designed to handle all of the traffic, the heavy truck traffic that is presently on that bridge due to the additional trucks that go down to the ethanol plant in that area down there. So their recommendation was to get it on the 5-year plan for replacement of the bridge. We have looked at the bridge and looked at past pictures of the underside of the bridge, and we don't see any real significant changes in the hairline cracking. There was some from 2 years prior, but we felt that we should go ahead and get it on the state plan. And you have before you a resolution to be approved, asking for that being put on the 5-year plan. And based on that resolution, it's anticipated that it would be in 2008 that bridge would be replaced. And this comes to you with the recommendation of the Public Works Committee for approval.
Thank you, Dave. So we have a resolution for that then?
Well,
Or a
Dave,
motion, excuse me.
I have a question here. Now, that's across the Big Sioux River, but a little further south, isn't there a smaller bridge as well?
There is a smaller bridge, and looking at the design of that, they felt that one was adequate, and it's not showing the signs of cracking that this one is.
Well,
It's a much older bridge and probably was better made.
okay, go figure. Can I have a motion then to, for the resolution to add the project to the state 5-year plan? So moved by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Agenda item number 11 is consideration of amendments to the city safety manual. And Bruce McGee, please.
Good evening. Back in about 2002, the safety committee started reviewing the safety manual, looking for updates. We had a lot of format changes over the years. Just some of the highlights were on page 3, we changed and developed rotation language for how often committee members can be on the committee and how fast they can rotate out. Changed on the buildings, removing some items that Risk Services no longer provides the service for HVAC inspections. Nobody locally does it. It was a requirement that we don't need. I mean, the South Dakota Public Assurance stuff says we don't need. On page 12, the lockout tagout procedures. The procedure is basically the one we use at the wastewater plant, and we just updated the language to make it consistent with what we do out there and to bring it into compliance with everything else. On page 13, we did some vehicle operations. We updated what happens to the MVRs that we do on the employees that drive regularly, and updated the insurance language so that anytime insurance regulations change from the state, that we don't have to come back and change the manual to do it, just so that they comply automatically with it. On hand tools, there's some items where it said that manufacturers should license the people that use them. Manufacturers don't license them, we just have to train them. Page 21 on portable jacks and hoists, there was a requirement to test them at 125% of the rated capacity. Nobody will test them at that. So that's a manufacturer's requirement. They have to manufacture it too. We don't want to test them in the field exceeding their capacity. And on page 28 in the confined space entry, again, the procedures from the wastewater treatment facility. We clarified the language and just got it to update and agree with the procedure that we're using. Basically, all the other changes are format changes and removing some bold lettering and just changing it. So this comes from the safety committee with the recommendation to approve it.
Thank you, Bruce. May I have a motion then to approve these amendments to the city safety manual?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Arbogast, seconded by Mr. Wilson. Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 12 is consideration of a 3-year tractor rental agreement with Connington Clark Equipment, and that's for the street department. Mike Rye.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council, and that's what that is, asking permission to rent a tractor for 3 years with the option to buy after those 3 years. Connington Clark was the best deal for the city with a yearly payment of $48.22.33. That's if we hold it to 300 hours or less. At the end, if you want to purchase that with a purchase option, it'd be $12,799.07. The total price being $22,774.72. We've been renting a tractor for $25 an hour, and this reduces our cost to $16 an hour. It comes with a due pass by the Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mike. Can we have a motion then for the 3-year tractor rental agreement with Connington Clark? So moved by Mr. Solberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there any further discussion?
Better to lease these than to buy them?
Well, we've got a government, we get a government discount there, and I think it's better to lease them for those first 3 years and make sure it's the size you want with the equipment you want rather than getting something maybe too big.
We have a chance to check it out first.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 13 is a request for $7,500 contingency account budget transfer, and that's to the fire department for purchase of defibrillators for the PAD program, which is public access defibrillator. Mike Youngman.
Good evening. I have with me tonight Don Rowland, Lieutenant Don Rowland, and Captain Greg Nollner, and this is a program they've been working very hard on. I'm going to give them an opportunity to explain it to you, and they have a demonstration they'd like to show, so you can just see how easy these programs, these operations really do work. We actually brought a mannequin, don't worry.
Good evening, Mayor Fox and members of the council. Captain Greg Nolder and I have been with the department for 13, 14 plus years, and we've been instructors, CPR first aid instructors, 10 plus years. And what we've found out over the course of the years is the city of Watertown doesn't have a lot of defibrillators out there. And what we realize is it's important to do for life safety measures is to get out there, be proactive, and educate the community on understanding of what they really are. Well, the Public Access Defibrillator Program is a program that's been around the countryside for the last 2-3 years. And basically what happens is when you go into sudden cardiac arrest, your heart goes into what's called ventricular fibrillation. It's called VFib, as us paramedics understand it. But what happens is your heart goes into what's called a chaotic, useless, quivering motion. And what the defibrillator is doing is that identifying it's a shockable rhythm, and essentially what it's going to do is shock it into a normal sinus rhythm so you can have a normal quality of life, of course. Well, basically the defibrillators, they're small, they're portable, they're safe, they're simple to use, and what we'd like to do is, like I said a little bit later, is we're going to do a defibrillator demo here. Why does Watertown need it in the Watertown community? Well, essentially our community is growing. As you can see the maps earlier tonight, the city is growing and our response times are getting a little bit longer and longer. And as our response times get longer, so does the needs of our patients. You know, our patients are getting out there a little bit too far and when they're in sudden cardiac arrest. Like I said earlier, the heart goes into what's called ventricular fibrillation, and what we need to get there optimally is in 3 to 5 minutes. If you get there within 3 to 5 minutes, you have a chance of survival of 50%, which is pretty good. I mean, 1 out of 2 chance of living. And any minute thereafter, it decreases by 10%. So you do the math, 10 minutes, basically you're not going to make it, you're going to die. And right now, Sioux Falls community alone has 250 defibrillators. And we went down, Greg and I did, to talk to District Fire Chief Jim Sedaris, who is the program director down there. And he basically said they will probably have up to 1,000 in the next 2 to 3 years. Last year alone, they had 6 known saves in the city of Sioux Falls. Matter of fact, there was one individual that was in a local establishment down there in November, and a individual pulled the defibrillator off the wall, grabbed it, was a non-trained person, grabbed it off the wall, put the patches on him, and the individual's alive today and going into the same local establishment. So just to know anybody can use them. They're safe, they're simple, they're effective. The one thing that I want to tell you tonight is the defibrillator is so easy to use that the only shockable rhythm that it acknowledges is VFib, the rhythm that I talked about. So if anybody was to pass out right here on the floor right now, and you thought the defibrillator is going to hurt you by me hooking that up to it, it won't shock you unless you have that shockable rhythm. So the only known therapeutic response to ventricular fibrillation is a defibrillation, a shock. And like I said earlier, what the heart will then do is go into your pacemaker, sends electrical impulses through the heart, and it'll start the heart to fire again. And that's what defibrillation is. The American Heart Association states that 95% of all victims that suffer sudden cardiac arrest die outside the hospital. The reason being is they're not receiving that defibrillation that they desperately need in that 3 to 5 minutes. And of those 5% that do live,
have received that defibrillation. So that's where the EMS responder paramedics are getting out there and timing that with that 5%. And basically, the bottom line is we need to educate and go out into the community here to let people know that the reason why we wanted to get these defibrillators out there is to let people know that it's cost effective in this program. We will offer them at half the cost to the citizens of Watertown, the business owners, the churches, the factories, the department stores, and let them know that the normal cost for a defibrillator, I believe the Park and Rec just got one, it costs like $2,200. We can get them at a lower cost, and I think around $1,300, $1,400. So we'll provide that at half the cost to the patrons of Watertown, and also provide them free training and maintenance through the Watertown Fire Department. We would be the program directors. Greg and I would be the ones with other associates at our department going out and teaching these individuals. So with that, I'd open our demo up. Greg, you want to do that quick?
Just want to add something. Chief Vitek.
Come to the microphone.
Don mentioned that the rec center has just received an AED. I believe I was told, Mike, is the library getting one?
As soon as you guys get this program.
As soon as we get that program, okay. All right. Okay. Anyway, there's just not a lot of them out there, and we do have 2 of them on the patrol cars right now at this time. And I believe Chief Vitek is going to be looking at establishing, get them in all the cars that they have. And what we'd like to do is be proactive in the community and have our department heads, the golf course, maybe the landfill. We've had an incident out there in the past where they've possibly could have used when they're far enough out, the response time isn't there. Just that the city's going to be proactive in this to show the community that this is a good thing to do. We'd like to also follow through with the department heads, getting them in all their departments also. And whether they go through the PAD program that we have or whatever, that's yet to be worked out. But this is a good start for us to do. So, thank you.
With that, we'd like to do a quick demonstration. Can we have Councilmember Johnson help us out with that?
Good, give him a good one.
I had suggested that we get an elementary student to show how easy it is to use these, and these guys said, well, let's go one step better and use a council member.
Josh, can we put the mannequin out here on the floor with that? Yeah. Okay. Okay, what I'm gonna have you do is just when I call for 911 to grab an AED, just grab over there and go get it. Did you grab a face mask? Okay, say we have an individual that goes down in sudden cardiac arrest in City Hall here. Basically, it takes 1 minute to identify that the patient's unresponsive, about another 30 seconds to have the individual,
Otherwise, they can't hear you on the at home.
It takes about 1 minute to identify that the patient's went in unresponsive, and another 30 seconds for Brad to go call 911, give the information to the dispatch center, and then the dispatch center would walk us through this if we had to have a patient that was in cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So essentially, from where we're at right now, to the time that person would actually receive a defibrillator would take 2 to 3 minutes before we'd get a response. So essentially, if an EMS crew was to come here with a defibrillator, it would take about 5 minutes. Remember we talked 50% survival in 5 minutes? That's where we'd be at with the paramedic crew just right here as we speak. So if we have a defibrillator on scene here, we have a possibility of saving this person within 2 to 3 minutes. So they have a great percentage-wise. So with that, I will... Want to hold this, Greg? We're going to identify that this patient's unresponsive. I'm going to come up to him. I'm going to shake Johnny. Johnny, you okay? And he's no response. So at that time, I'm going to do a head tilt, chin lift. I'm going to open up his airway. I'm going to look, listen for chest rise and fall. I'm going to give him 2 breaths. And at that time, I would look for signs of circulation. All we're looking for is coughing, movement, or spontaneous breathing. The individual doesn't have anything, so then I would start chest compressions. But before I did all that, since I have bystanders here, I would say, Brad, go grab the AED and call 911, okay? So Greg, would you start CPR for me?
Yeah, this is serious, Brad. Hurry up.
So Greg will be doing chest compressions. He'll be doing 15 of them. And when he gets to that, I would do 2 breaths. As a matter of fact, Greg, you just want to. So now Brad's here with the AED. As soon as the AED is here, hold it, lock that open, and just hit the on-off button. So Brad's going to hit the on-off button there. Okay, now we want to just listen. As you can see, the machine is talking to us through the whole process here. Now it's going to tell us to remove the clothes from the chest, and it did. He's telling him to pull the red handle to open the bag. So then you just pull them out. As you can see, the pads have a color coding on them. They're yellow, they're red. They just have a top for the top portion of the chest and the side. And the adhesives show him a picture placement. Or he's going to take the adhesive off, and then there's a picture placement to put the pad on there. And I don't know if Brad's ever had education in using the defibrillator. So what my point here is to show how simple, safe, and effective it is. South Dakota codified law states that trainers, physicians, and civil lay rescuers have immunity. So anymore, I think it's getting to be where we don't do something is where we're going to get into trouble. So now it's telling you not to touch the patient. Now we're just going to wait and listen till it tell you what to do.
Stand by. Preparing to shock. Everyone clear. Press flashing button. Shock delivered.
Generally what happens is it goes through a 3-shock scenario.
Evaluating heart rhythm. Stand by. Preparing to shock. Everyone clear. Press flashing button. Shock delivered. Do not touch patient. Evaluating heart rhythm.
The reason you wouldn't touch the patient, of course, is it's providing a 200 to 300 joules shock, so that's why we wouldn't want to touch the patient.
Everyone clear. Press flashing button. Shock delivered.
So now what it's going to say, check for a pulse. And Greg's checking for a pulse and looking for signs of circulation. If no pulse, it'll tell us to continue CPR.
If no pulse, start CPR.
So now Greg will start CPR and do this for 1 minute. And at any time the defibrillator acknowledges a shockable rhythm, it'll say stop CPR, shock advised. Very safe, very effective. And like I said, the only known therapeutic response to ventricular fibrillation is this machine. So we hope the council will request, with our request tonight, approve the $7,500. The Watertown Community Foundation has already responded to this program and is already given us $18,750. They approved it a week and a half ago. Prairie Lakes Hospital already approved $7,500 to put into this program. Our goal is to get 25 defibrillators in the next year, with up to over 100 in the course of the next couple of years also. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And any questions, feel free.
Will there be any priority as to who, I mean, you have so many dollars now, as to which is a prime receiver of this, a school or a church or a wall, a mall, or is there a triage system as to who can get this?
That's a good question. What we decided is we were going to target areas of response. What we mean by that is anybody that's over 5 minutes, we would target those first. Areas of need would, of course, would be the airport, the factory setting out there, any businesses in that direction. Age is what we're really targeting. 50 years of age areas, or 25 to 50 people that congregate throughout the day. And of course, out east of town is another area of need that we thought would probably be our first. You're right, churches would be a great area of need, and we're talking, some of the churches have upward of 500-600 people at one time in those places. So we definitely will call them, and hopefully we'll try to do a program with David J. Law here on What's Up. Talk to some of the committees in town, clubs, and send out letters to these businesses to let them know that we have this program and move forward with that.
Thank you. So we have a motion then to do the transfer for the contingency fund transfer to the fire department then for the purchase of the defibrillators. Is there a motion, please?
I'd make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Wilson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. York. Any further discussion
I
then?
just might say the safety committee made the recommendation to approve, and I've been in other communities where these have been installed, and they do save lives.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the other comments I'd have with relation to our police department, you know, I didn't know until this all came up, number one, how important these are, but number two, the fact that we don't have all of our squad cars equipped with them, and these are people that are actually trained in using them. They're out rolling in the community, all over, and I think that's a priority, that we need to get those equipped as well with these things, so we need to work on that aspect of it.
Any further comments?
Well, on a lighter note, I hope one will be on the wall, because looking at your age requirements, we all qualify.
Not quite.
I think all city departments probably should have them. So, yes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just don't take me out in the middle of that floor though and do that.
I'm going to leave all that alone. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 14 is the consideration of a contract change order number 6 to the South Dakota Department of Transportation contract with McLaughlin and Schultz Incorporated, and that's for the 4th Avenue South project. And Dave, please.
Yes, you have a change order number 6 for the 4th Avenue project. Before you, this is for a reduction in the total amount of the contract of $76,439.73. This is for adjustment of the quantities to reflect the quantities that were actually installed. And this comes to you with recommendation of the Public Works Committee for approval.
Could we have a motion then for that approval?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Garnos and seconded by Mr. Heller. Is there any further discussion?
This is kind of an unusual change order. I like this kind.
They're all fighting for this one. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Tracy, item number 15 is consideration of applications for abatement or refund of taxes, and we have 3 of them. Tracy?
You have the 3 applications in your agenda packet, and all 3 have been recommended for approval by the County Director of Equalization. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, one is the Prairie Lakes Healthcare System Incorporated for $11,248.54. The second one is CAJ Enterprises for $343.44. And the third is Jenkins Living Center for $1,021.86. So could we have a motion then for those approval for the abatements?
So move.
Second.
So moved by Mrs. Walder and seconded by Mr. Heller. Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 16 is Herb, approval of Assistant City Engineer and Engineer 1 and Urban Planner position descriptions and grade placement. And Herb, again?
Thank you, Mayor. In your council packet, there's 3 job descriptions with a grade classification on it. I'm going to ask Dave Peterson real quickly to, from the engineering department perspective, to talk about the engineering positions, and then I'll talk about the planning and zoning request.
Good evening again. We have are proposing 2 different positions for the engineering department. One of them would be called Engineer 1 and the other would be called Assistant City Engineer. In the recent years, we've experienced quite a little change in personnel in the assistant engineer position, and we believe it's mainly due to them advancing in their careers and getting their registration as professional engineers, and then they have no place for advancement in the city. And they move on to other opportunities. So we're proposing to have an engineer one, which would be not an entry level, but it would be with less experience and not as registered as a professional engineer, and also a position for assistant city engineer, which would require additional experience and a professional engineer's license. We're planning to, or we are advertising these positions, but we would just propose to fill one of these positions depending on the qualifications of the people that applied for the position. So we would like to have these two positions approved by the council.
May I have a motion for that approval, please?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Johnson. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Arbogast. Any further discussion or questions? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dave.
Mayor, let me talk about the urban planner position also real quick before we move off of this agenda item. That position is for the Planning and Zoning Department and is the position that the City Council approved during the budget process last summer. After doing quite a bit of research, staff decided this job description best represents the duties staff believes will fulfill the needs of the department. We're going to be advertising here real soon to seek an individual who demonstrates a sound knowledge of subdivision planning, plat approval, vacation of public right-of-ways, easements, annexation, some of the kinds of actions that you talked about, or we talked about earlier tonight. We've got a real shortfall in the needs in the department right now in that area. This position is a non-exempt position, grade 5 in our classification system, and will report to the planning and zoning official. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but at this point I'd certainly request a motion to approve this position like you did the other two.
Okay, then may we have a motion then to approve the urban planner position?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Walder. Is there any further questions? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 17 is authorization to advertise for bids for construction of the senior center restroom renovation project. Herb?
Thank you, and the request in front of you is just that. I've been working with folks from the Senior Citizen Center to, in fact, get their project moving forward. We're real close to being able to advertise for bids, and it would be my intent to be able to do that and hopefully come back to the council at the first meeting in March and hopefully have a project we can award. I will also tell you that based on some information we just found out with their sewer line, we're probably going to advertise their sewer line as an alternate and then bring back what the cost of that might be, which would be in addition to what we actually requested or put into the budget last summer. So at that point in time, we'll make some recommendations to you on whether or not we ought to be looking to supplement some additional funds to take that project on or schedule it in a future budget process.
Thank you, Herb. So we have a motion then to authorization to advertise for bids for the construction of the senior center restroom project.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Giselbeck. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next is item number 18 is the approval of renewal of property and equipment insurance policy with St. Paul Travelers and authorization to pay the premium, which is $76,633. And Tracy?
Thank you. This is a renewal, comes up each year at this time. The total premium for the coming year is $106,135. That provides coverage for approximately $70 million of city property, including municipal utility property. The portion of the premium that I'm asking you to authorize me to pay tonight is the amount listed on your agenda, the $76,633. The balance is to be paid by the municipal utilities for their coverage on their properties. The total increase in the premium over last year is just under 3.5%. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
If not, then may we have a motion then to authorize the payment of the premium?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Heller. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Solberg. Any further discussion?
There goes the 76,000 we saved up above.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any comments, questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Tracy. Item number 19 is a motion to approve the bills and payroll and authorize payment. May we have a motion for that, please? Motion by Mr. Giselbeck. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Heller. Any discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Approved. Item number 20 is the open. Is there anything to come before the open?
Yeah, I've got just a comment or two. I talked to Mike Rye a few minutes ago about the way that Highway 81 is being taken care of, and he tells me that that is the responsibility of the state of South Dakota to take care of Highway 81. If any of you have driven on Highway 81 in the last 6 months, you'll know that it is in terrible shape. Mike tells me that they have tried to patch it. I really doubt that. If they have, they have. And I understand that it's pretty difficult to try to patch things in the wintertime. But I really think something has to be done about that in short order. It's an embarrassment for the city of Watertown. It really is. And I'm ashamed of it. And I'm ashamed of the way that it's being taken care of. And I certainly hope that we can ask the state to do a lot better job of taking care of that highway than is being done at the present time.
Is that from where to where?
Well, basically it's from Kemp Avenue to Highway 212.
Yeah, in a short time patch, but that's also slated for major reconstruction in what, 2008?
It's 2008 or 9.
I know that, but if we certainly cannot wait till 2008 for that to be taken care of. You can, there's holes that are large enough to drop a wheel in and really make a mess out of the front end of your car, or blow a tire out. Right? And I think that's sad.
We'll voice the city council's concerns to the Department of Transportation and hopefully bring back whatever their response might be.
Thank you, Herb. Is there anything else to come before the open?
Yes, I have a request here. Some time ago, there was an issue brought up about an unpaved street. And I believe the council urged I believe it was, I don't know which department was going to survey the streets and find out just how many streets that are still not paved here in Watertown. And this surfaced the other day when I had a phone call from a party complaining about another area that has blacktop both ways, but not in the middle. And consequently, it's in a very, very rough part of to drive on. Whatever happened to that request?
Mr. Garnos, I think I can answer that. First of all, the engineering department has done some research. In fact, we were going to talk to the Public Works Committee at their next meeting, which is the 14th, and then bring a report forward from that meeting to the council. So an update's coming.
Thank you, Herb.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before the open? If not, we'll move on to any old business. Is there any old business to come before us? Any new business? Any liaison member reports?
Mayor, I would just like to mention to the Finance Committee members, if they haven't seen the email that I sent out earlier today, we are planning to move the meeting date up for the February Finance Committee meeting to February 14th. The 21st is the normal meeting date, but that conflicts with the City Council's mid-February meeting. So our intention is to have the February Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, February 14th at our normal time, which is 4:15 in the afternoon upstairs here at City Hall.
Of those that are the members of that committee, is there any problems with that? Any, no problems? Okay. I guess we're good to go then, Tracy. Thank you. We will not have an executive session, and we'll move to a motion to adjourn on 7 p.m. on February 21. So there's a joint motion by Mrs. Arbogast and Mr. Garnos, and a second by Mr. Solberg, and all in favor say aye.
I'm
Approved.